the St. Mary's and Elizabeth Hospital in Louisville, Kentucky. My folks divorced when I was probably around 6 years old.
All right, share that blanket.
Okay, we're here today with Bob Seifried, the senior person of our family, and we're going to let him tell us a little bit about his life, where it started, interest, his middle years, war years, and maybe even leave us with some advice at the end. And so to start with, I'm going to turn this over to Bob, and he's going to tell us about his early years.
Okay, I was born in 1923, November the 6th at the St. Mary's and Elizabeth Hospital in Louisville, Kentucky. My folks divorced when I was probably around 6 years old, so that would make it around 1929. The Great Depression was in October of 1929. We didn't feel the Depression right now, but both my
All right, share that blanket.
Okay, we're here today with Bob Seifried, the senior person of our family, and we're going to let him tell us a little bit about his life, where it started, interest, his middle years, war years, and maybe even leave us with some advice at the end. And so to start with, I'm going to turn this over to Bob, and he's going to tell us about his early years.
Okay, I was born in 1923, November the 6th at the St. Mary's and Elizabeth Hospital in Louisville, Kentucky. My folks divorced when I was probably around 6 years old, so that would make it around 1929. The Great Depression was in October of 1929. We didn't feel the Depression right now, but both my father and Mr. Boley, who my mother married after they divorced, kept their jobs for another 3 or 4 years. But in time, the Depression caught up with them, and my dad had to move to Frankfurt to keep working, and Mr. Boley, who was in the loan business, home loan business, of course, lost his job. Let me think just a moment. My mother and I moved after the divorce. My mother and I moved in with my uncle, who lived in a shotgun house in South Louisville, Kentucky. And that's where I started the first grade. But after a while, when she married Mr. Boley, we finally moved up into the East End of Holland, and had a pretty nice place we lived in. But then, of course, later on, after we'd moved in, it wasn't too long after that he lost his job. But fortunately, friends from the loan company, he became, in 1933, of course, the Roosevelt, I'm trying to use the right word,
Was Roosevelt our president then?
Roosevelt was president at that time. And Roosevelt, it was the end of Prohibition. He eliminated Prohibition in 1933, and Mr. Boley went to work for Glenmore Distillers. And he was moving all over the country, but my mother just didn't like moving. We lived in Columbus, Ohio, and we lived in Fort Worth for just a little bit. But he finally quit the job and came on back to Louisville.
So you said Fort Worth, Texas?
Yes, Fort Worth, Texas.
Wow.
We weren't there very long. We were both dissatisfied. I was dissatisfied. And I guess we made it miserable for Mr. Boley, but it was probably a mistake on our part. And what he was doing, he was setting up as a goodwill man. He was visiting various restaurants and so forth, introducing the Glenmore brand bourbon to the restaurant business. I grew when I ended up living with my mother up until my teenage years. Although my dad had custody, I lived with my mother, and I lived with my mother up until about the 6th grade. And by that time, my grandmother moved down there, and my dad set up a house. So I lived with my dad and my grandmother. And I went to junior high school, Southern Junior High School in Louisville, Kentucky, and played in the band and played in the orchestra, and also met Greta then.
What was the instrument you played back then?
I played snare drum.
Huh. Is that when you had all that pretty curly hair?
Yes. That's when I had the curly hair, if that's what you want to call it. Anyhow.
I've seen pictures of you when you were young. You were probably had girls chasing you.
No, you know, it was a funny thing. I never chased girls until I got much older.
Well, you probably didn't need a chase, and they were after you.
No, I wasn't interested. I was a Boy Scout, and I was interested in the Scouts and the things we did in the Scouts, and I kind of, Greta and I, well, when I was in the Scouts, Greta was poking in the window to see what I was doing there, and so I started dating Greta, but you know, we sat on her front porch for a long time, and I wouldn't even kiss her. I was too bashful.
What grade were you in then? Was it like 9th or 10th grade? Or?
This was about maybe a freshman in high school.
Well, back then, kids didn't kiss each other, freshmen, did they?
Well, she told me that some guy kissed her, so I said, well, I will come over some night and kiss you a whole lot.
Oh, there you go.
And I did. She kept waiting for me to kiss her, so I finally kissed her. Of course, her dad was a minister.
Ooh.
And this was the parsonage. We sat on the front porch of the parsonage, and her dad used to pull the old trick. He'd come in winding his clock to get up. That was my signal to leave. But I got along fine with her dad. He was a good friend of mine. And of course, the reason she moved was because her dad was transferred to Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Ah.
And that's where she went to school. She went to high school in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and I visited her, I think, a couple times.
Where were you living at the time when she moved?
The time that she moved, I was living on.
Was that in Columbus still? Or back? Where were you living?
Well, I was back in Louisville.
Oh, back in Louisville. Okay.
Back in Louisville, because it was south end of Louisville where I lived.
Oh, okay.
And we lived on Beecher Street, 513 Beecher Street.
Wow.
And my dad, of course, he was working on the railroad, but he lost his leg in 1937.
Yeah, how did he lose that leg again?
Huh?
How did he lose that leg? I remember, but
Well, the track crews didn't put out. It was a fast freight, and the track crews did not put out warning signs, and they hit this curve, and the ballast slipped, and they turned over.
what's a ballast?
Well, that's the gravel and rocks that they have between the cross ties, you know.
Okay.
And so Dad tried to run to the back of where the coal tender was, and he was buried in coal, and then the water from the boiler came in, and that's what burned his leg. And he crawled out, he crawled out, and they found him with his leg up on a stump, and so he ended up in a hospital up in Covington, Kentucky.
Was he the engineer at that time?
No, he was a fireman at that time. He was
That's
a
the guy
fireman.
that puts the coal in the engine?
Yeah, he's the guy that takes care of the coal. Of course,
okay.
it was a stoker type engine, so they didn't shovel coal like they used to in the early years.
I got you. So what were some of your favorite interests, hobbies, or what was going on besides family that you can remember, like before you were a teenager and when you were a young teenager? Anything stand out?
Well, I was very interested in scouting and getting merit badges, and my scoutmaster, Emmett Jordan, who remained a friend until he died, we were interested in scouting and camping and that sort of thing. And of course, it wasn't too long then World War II came along.
Mm-hmm.
And Emmett was with the 138th Field Artillery, and he joined them as a cook.
So is Emmett older than you?
Oh yeah, Emmett was a grown man.
Oh, okay.
And Emmett was nice to me. Of course, this is back in the days when money wasn't plentiful.
Yeah.
Still, and Emmett would take me to the movies and things like that. And I think my grandmother thought Emmett was a child molester, but he certainly wasn't. He was just that way.
Yeah.
And so we always had a bunch of guys with us at some time.
I think I met Emmett at your 50th.
You did.
Wedding
You
anniversary.
met him at my 50th wedding anniversary.
That was nice.
He was there. Yeah.
That was nice for him to make it.
He was always around, and he was buying a suit and stepped off of the platform wrong and did something to his hip or leg and died. He died as a result of that.
Oh no!
But when he left the service, he was a colonel.
Wow.
Started out as a cook and ended up a colonel.
Goodness. So then when you followed him, are you finished? There's some more you want to tell about in high school?
Well,
You were talking
of
about Greta.
course, in high school, my best friend was Don Brown. And Don Brown and I were buddies from about, in fact, we were buddies from junior high all the way through high school. I was a year ahead of him. And we both played in the band. And then
You're a snare. That's right.
snare drum. I played the band, my marching band.
Yeah.
And when the first, I moved into Mayo High School in I think it was around 1937.
Yeah.
The year before, well, this is 1939. The year before, Mayo High won the national championship, best band in the country.
Wow.
High school band. And as a result, they were offered to come to New York to play for the King and Queen of England at the 1939 World's Fair.
Wow.
So we did. We went played the World's Fair.
You got to go do that?
I got to go. I got to go. And we marched and prayed, and we lived out in we lived at a American Legion home or building out in Queens, and of course, as young guys, we wanted to go into all the strip shows. Sally Rand and her gang, so we enjoyed it.
What was Sally? What do you mean Sally Ram? Is that the name of the stripper?
Sally Rand was one of the great strippers of all time.
Oh, okay.
She had these fans. She didn't expose herself. She just knew how to manipulate these fans. And we had to be 18 to get in. Yeah. And we got in anyhow. And there were some guys that boasted about how smart they were, and they couldn't get in. But I don't know, we just got in. What big show? And they had shows and exhibitions, and it was quite an affair for us kids. And so we came back, and we got back to Louisville, and.
So what did you actually get to shake hands with the King and Queen?
Oh no.
But you got to see him in person.
Yeah, we got to see him.
That's quite an honor.
And then
what was the Queen and King's name back then? You remember?
Well, it was Queen Elizabeth's mother and father.
Oh, okay.
And I think it was George, and I forget what her mother's name was. But anyhow, of course they were young. I guess they were younger, that is. But we weren't too interested in the king and queen. We just wanted to march up there and show off. And
Well, yeah, you get to New York. That's pretty neat.
yeah. Well, the playing in the band was a big experience for me and Don. You know, we played in contests and all that sort of thing, and I enjoyed it. But in the work, huh?
Did you have any special studies you were doing in high school to prepare yourself for
No,
anything?
no.
Nothing?
That's one of the sad parts of I wasn't a very good student, and it was back in the days. It's hard for people now to conceive of this, but not everybody got to go to college. College was expensive,
Yeah.
and it wasn't as essential. College education wasn't as essential back in those days.
I agree.
If you went to work for a company and you did well, you could be promoted as well as anybody. But that was a mistake on my part, and I was both my mother and father never went past the 8th grade in school. And it was a little atmosphere that would have helped me. I can't blame it on them, but you know, if you have somebody prodding you and telling you have to go to college and do this, you think about it
Yeah.
differently. My dad was a blue collar worker, and my mother was a homemaker, and you know, they just didn't think.
Well, you know, I remember even at my age, which is 20 years behind you, college was not that important either. I was the first one in my
Yeah.
whole family that ever went to college.
Well, nobody in my family had ever gone to college.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody. But they all had decent jobs, and they made a good living after that.
All right, so then the next thing after that, after school, would be moving into your service, time in the service.
Yes, I joined the Navy, and ended up going to radio school down in Jacksonville, Florida. And radio school, and then I went from radio school to learning to be a radio operator, Morse Code. Went to gunnery school to become a aerial gunner. And we did a lot of, you go through a whole lot back in those days. We shot a lot of skeet. We worked from a turret inside the building, and did everything you were supposed to do as an aerial gunner, learning how to lead and what to do, lead your target and so forth. Then
And these were not like shooting dove. This was shooting down the enemy.
enemy, right? Yeah. Well, we went through these they had a big screen it was kind of like these games down, and we'd have the plane coming at us, and we would be in this turret, and we would, get points, scoring, hitting them. It was hydraulic turret, up and down that way. And then when we came up to graduating in the school, we didn't know where we were assigned, so I was assigned to the PBM squadron up, and they were right at that time. They were up in Providence, Rhode Island, and that's where I joined the squadron. I wish I'd have joined them when they were going through their training down in Banana River, Florida. But we went from Providence, Rhode Island to Norfolk, Virginia. And our job was to fly cover over convoys for the men going overseas, and looking for subs, keeping the subs away from them because they were sinking people. Of course, when we were up there looking for the subs, they didn't show. They stayed down. We went out even early in the morning for daylight, and they weren't there. We would fly maybe 15, 16 hours at a stretch. There were 2 radiomen, me and Darwin Arnoldson, and we had a little booth on the left side of the plane, and that's where we had the radar.
Show us on your plane. This is the model of the plane
Okay.
that family got for you.
Yeah, well, they don't have all the pictures on here, but we had a little booth on this side. This is actually the radar up here. It was a parabolic antenna.
Uh-huh.
We could turn 360 degrees. And we could have different ranges from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 miles. And we sat in there enclosed with one earphone on the radio and one earphone on the intercom in the plane. And that's what we did. Of course, my battle station was back here. Now, the plane we flew didn't have turrets on them. I think it had a twin 30s back there. And the reason I was back there, because I was small enough to crawl back up into the back end of the plane. We carried 4 500-pound depth charges.
Oh, to get the subs.
Yeah, the sub. That's what we would drop on them if we could find them. And then then the plane had wing tanks on each side. We had tanks all along through the bottom of the hull. Plus we had on what we call saddle tanks, which were right up above where the wheels were. And they were each, I think 500 gallons each. There's 4 of them. So we carried about 3,000 gallons of gasoline in that thing.
Wow. And that plane could land on land or in water?
Oh no, only in water.
Oh, only in water, okay.
Only in water.
I got you.
When we left, I've got some things on video if you ever want to watch it. I mean, you can watch it on PBM. They would, they launched us, and there would be these poor guys in bathing suits in the wintertime.
Oh.
And they'd have a Caterpillar tractor on the back to keep us from going too fast, and one in front of the buoy up there to pull it down. They get us into the water, and then the wheels clipped off. They take the wheels off, the front wheels, the 2 side wheels, the tail wheel, and then they would tow them back up onto the beach.
Wow.
And
That's a good story.
And then those poor guys, I felt sorry for them all winter long. And where we flew up there in out of Norfolk on the North Sea, and it was rough because we were hauling these guys overseas. But we'd fly over them, they'd wave at us as we flew over them. You know, we would fly a pattern all the way around them, try to keep them safe.
They kind of liked knowing you were up there in case
Yeah,
there was
I think they appreciated that.
And there's a picture here too. This is a picture of you with your plane, isn't it?
Yeah, this is a plane, and this is the crew.
Hold her up a little higher, Pop.
Crew,
There you go.
and that's me right there. You wouldn't recognize it.
Hold it up just a tad higher. There we go. Yeah.
I'm right here.
Yeah. That's good.
After Norfolk, things kind of calmed down, and they sent us down to Panama, Cologne, and we flew on the Atlantic side, protecting the Atlantic side of the canal, because subs were down there trying to block shipping going into the canal. Then after a while, they sent us over to the Galapagos Islands, the Galapagos Islands. And,
Is that where the dragons are?
Iguanas.
Iguana.
Iguana,
Some of them
yeah.
call them dragons or something.
Yeah, they call them
Over there?
They were harmless, really.
Yeah.
And we were there a while, and then we were down there. We stayed in Ecuador a while. We flew in Ecuador, Salinas, Ecuador. And so after the war started winding down naturally, and they broke up the cruise, and I was sent back to Corpus Christi, Texas. And while in Corpus Christi, Texas, I applied for flight school and got in. But it was near the end of the war, so they sent me up to Northfield, Minnesota, in which Greta came up. Greta was there. We were newlyweds, and she stayed, and I went to this college, St. Olaf. And then
It's called what?
St. Olaf College.
St. Olaf. Huh. Okay.
It was a Norwegian. You have Norwegian and Swedes in Minnesota. And then they sent me to Olathe, Kansas, and she had to, it's right, then I had to send her home. And while I was in Olathe, Kansas, of course she was pregnant, and I couldn't get a leave to go home, but I had the points to get home because I'd been overseas for so long.
Ah.
You got different points for if you were overseas or what you did, and I had everything I needed to get out. I could have gotten out earlier, really, but I was going to stay in, go to flight school. So anyhow,
Well, how many years was that after you got married that you all were pregnant with Mike?
oh, let's see, we married in October of '29, and I guess Mike was born in.
Mike?
Well, I got out of the service in '43,
Okay,
and I got out of the service in '43,
that's 4 years. Okay.
and
Mike was probably born in like what, 45?
45, 44. I can't remember
Yeah.
the exact dates.
Because Mike's probably what, 71 now, or
Yeah, he's 71. Mm-hmm.
so that'd be 2 years younger. It's probably
But
75.
you know, I got home
I mean,
the
45.
night before she was supposed to deliver. I got home, and then the funeral hearse picked her up to take her to the hospital. The funeral hearse, you heard this story, broke down on the way to the hospital
right.
in the middle of the night, 2:30, no cars out on the road, you know, and then I got some black people with a big car. They were coming down the road, and they pushed us all the way there. They pushed us to the wrong place. And we turned around, and they pushed us to the right place. And he was born around 4:30 in the morning.
Oh, cool.
Uh,
What? Back up to the war a minute. When you said the war was winding down, what was that feeling like for you?
oh,
Did you think that war was ever going to end in the right way?
well, we know when we knew Germany had surrendered. Germany surrendered first, and what we were getting ready to do when they sent me down to back to Corpus Christi, we were getting ready to invade Japan.
Mm.
And I was put in a new crew, and we were either going to be air, sea rescue or low-level bombing,
Wow.
which would have been a fun thing. But so I applied for flight school, and Rita was with me down in Corpus Christi, and they've been looking for me for 2 weeks. I've been trying to get me to take me up or send me up there. And I went in to check. He said, "We've been looking for you for 2 weeks. Where have you been?" Well, I wasn't living on base. I was living, in Corpus Christi.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a little one-room apartment, one room and one little kitchenette-like, or kitchen.
Well, you all hadn't been married that long. That's all you needed.
Yeah. Well, she was pregnant as could be. But so I just had to leave her. I didn't have any time to prepare. I had to just leave her down there. And she made her way back to Eddyville, Kentucky. That's where her
Wow.
folks were.
Wow.
And then, of course, I was sent up to St. Olaf. And I enjoyed it because I always wanted to fly. And one of the happiest years of my life is when I had a plane and I could fly.
So after Mike, then comes along Ronnie and then Leslie. And
Ronnie.
you were working where? Where's that when you were
Well, I
working?
was working at Standard Oil. Well, I first worked for J.M. Bleed. He was in a little accounting firm.
Uh-huh.
And that's how I got into accounting.
Okay.
I only got into accounting. I had worked at the bank, Citizens Fidelity Bank. And when I got out of the service, I was trying to get some help getting a job. And the manager of the bank said Mr. Bleed was looking somebody, and I had on the GI Bill where they paid you. But that's how I got into accounting. But I didn't really know what I was getting into, and I wasn't good at accounting. But I stayed with it. Yeah, and I ended up going with Standard Oil, and I was with Standard Oil in the accounting department for 11 years. And then
Wow.
I was still going to school at night. I'd gone to IU Southeast,
Mm-hmm.
at night, and I'd accumulated about 72 hours. And I switched over to University of Louisville, and I took a course in industrial management, and that's when I met Rucker.
Oh, that's right.
Rucker enticed me to leave Standard Oil.
Was he the teacher?
He was a teacher
Okay. At Louisville.
at the University of Louisville Night School.
Oh, cool.
So I went with Ben. He had some money in Bentwood Products. He was mixed up in that somewhere. They made these chairs you see in the funeral home. They were kind of bent wood.
Oh, you sure?
And I really got into something that was way over my head because I'd worked at Standard Oil, and it was kind of a production line thing. I was in what they called plant assets department, and that's all I worked with was assets. When I got there, I had a payroll, I had a cost system, I had receivables, I had payables. I just couldn't work that fast.
Yeah.
So that's when I left. I left them, and then I put an ad in the paper for a job and sales or something like that, and that's Mr. Orr called me.
Oh, yeah.
That's how I got my job there.
Well, that was a great find for you.
Yeah. So I liked sales because I was one of my jobs when I was raising my family there. I sold appliances on Saturday down on Spring Street in Jeffersonville, and heck, I was making more money there than I was at my regular job, and I was on straight commission, and I also counted movie tickets at night at the theater,
Wow.
and I went to school and did all those things.
Man, you were a busy man.
I was busy. I kept busy. And of course we were trying to raise a family. Then Greta, well, of course when the kids got so they could go to school, Greta went back to school. I mean, teaching. And of course that helped us a whole lot. But
She had that extra income, and she also did piano lessons. So you,
she did some piano lessons, but not as much as you would think. She had one or two pupils.
Oh,
That's
okay.
all. I mean, she didn't have a whole. And
played organ for the church.
she played organ for the church. So she was a go-getter. She was a hard worker. A lot of energy, a lot of nervous energy. And then I went with Orr, and then I was a Ma and Paul firm. I started out $250 base salary, which I never got increased until I was at the company. But when the last few years before our retirement, I was up in the six-figure income. But I was still getting $250 base salary.
All commission.
I couldn't get a raise.
Well, that commission's good when you're good.
Yeah.
And you became like vice president of the company, weren't you?
Yes, I was the first vice president of the company. And
And it's grown to an enormous company.
oh, they're a big company. If you look them up on the computer, you'll see what they are now. They do about $300 million a year now.
Oh, wow.
My first few years, I was getting maybe $40,000 a year or something like that.
Well, you mentioned your planes too.
Yeah.
Here's a photograph. How many planes did you have, Pop?
I had 3 different planes. My first plane was this Cessna 150. And when you own a plane, that's like boaters. You keep trying to move up.
Yeah.
And then this is my second plane. And then you can see there, I got old Ben.
Yeah.
He was in the back seat. We flew from Burnett up to Louisville. And here's the same plane down here repainted.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And this is my last plane, which is a Mooney. And that's a real nice little plane. It was a retractable landing gear and so forth. And it was fast. I really liked to fly.
And it
that.
had that tail that was different.
Yeah, I always tail straight up in there.
Yeah.
Where everybody else's tail kind of slanted.
Uh-huh.
And that's the way you can identify them usually. That plane, I think I bought that plane from one of these guys that has a huge, that hauls tractor trailers when they break down.
Uh,
And he was a student pilot, and he got lost or something. He put that thing in a barn, never took it out again.
Huh.
And I think I paid him $30,000 for it.
Wow.
And because it had set in the barn, it had rusted one of the cylinders. I flew it a while, but then the cylinder went bad, and that's when I got rid of it. But I would imagine that same plane today would be worth $45,000-$50,000.
Oh, I bet it's worth a lot more than that.
Because they quit making.
Yeah, I bet you couldn't buy that plane for less than $100,000.
Yeah, I don't.
Planes are expensive.
I don't know if it'd be 100, but it'd be a lot of. It would be a lot more than I paid for it.
Yeah.
I should have kept all my planes. That little old 150 there is worth about $16,000. I paid $6,600 for it.
Well, you know, my two favorite stories is the one where Ben met you and wouldn't get in the plane.
Yeah.
You might want to tell that story. And also when Ben was flying back with you and he was talking about the instruments. Those are my two favorite stories.
Oh yeah. Well, the first time we flew, Ben got in the plane, but then he got out. He said, "I want to see you fly around, take off and land, and first before I get back in the plane." So we did that, and then he flew with me. But when we left. Burn it, and we got, I don't know how far away we were probably about maybe, I'm guessing around Evansville, somewhere like that. Ben looked down at our artificial horizon and we were upside down, according to that. Well, I was all right. I was flying on radio with a VOR, so that.
I think the shocker was the fact that Ben, because he had one of those things on the computer, that he was able to recognize what the instrument said, and he said, "Hey, Pop, are we flying upside down or something like that?"
Oh yeah, artificial horizon. It went out. Anyhow, we made it back all right, and no problems. But I always worried about hauling anybody other than Greta because I wouldn't want to kill someone.
Well, yeah.
I tried to be as safe as I could with it without overloading it or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Then after the planes, got your kids through school, and I guess they all went off to college. We might tell them about kids going to college, I guess.
Well, of course, Mike was the first one to go, and he went up. I tried to pick out a college for Mike where there was. I was afraid if he went to IU, for instance, he'd be lost in the big. So we picked out Wabash, and he had to go up there and take an exam to get in. And usually they only picked about the top third of a class out of high school. And he thought he was pretty smart when he got up there, but they took care of that real fast his first year. I think he got a D in English or something like that. But anyhow, he cussed him and he learned to do it. Of course, I guess he hadn't studied when he was in high school. He didn't have to study much.
Because he's so smart.
But then Ronnie came along, and I said, "Well, Ronnie could go to a larger school, but I just had this thing against huge schools."
Mm-hmm.
So he ended up going down to West Virginia down there.
At Marshall.
Marshall.
Yeah.
And
why would you pick a school that's in a different state? That's interesting. You picked that school.
huh?
It's interesting that you all picked that school.
Looked up the population of the school. I looked up the fee because of course I was paying for these kids.
Sure.
Mike was on a partial scholarship up at Wabash.
Yeah, that wasn't an inexpensive school by any means.
No, and so I picked a school where it was a state school
Mm-hmm.
down there in Marshall. So that's why I picked it. Then Leslie followed him down there. She liked it, and of course, that's one of the things in my life that I'm proud of. That all my kids graduated from college.
That's great.
And of course, you know the rest of the story.
Okay, though. So then the kids get married, and I don't know if anything pops out in your mind about all the kids getting married, but then all of a sudden you and Greta empty nesters. What was that like?
Oh, that was great. It was great. We didn't have any expenses. It was like a raise in pay, you know. Because I had two of the kids were in school at the same time, and Greta was also going to school, getting her master's in music education. So it was, you know, we were in high cotton then, and so we started traveling. We made trips down and to New Orleans. We went to England 2 times. We went to Italy, and we were in Austria, Germany, and we made a trip up through the Baltic there. We got all the way up to Russia.
Wow.
Denmark, Sweden, Norway. And yes, we enjoyed ourselves. And I would advise that for any adult couple when the kids grow up is to, when you're young enough to really get out and enjoy yourself, and you know, don't wait too long, or do it.
Yeah. That's it's always great raising a family, but it's having that freedom to do things.
That's right, you know.
And the money to do it is wonderful.
That's part of the job. And then of course, I was able to save money. We both were able to save money. I was able to save money. When Greta's mother died, Greta wasn't a great saver. She bought a piano and got a fur coat and facelift. But I inherited a little bit, not a whole lot. My dad had this 4-plex apartment, and I won't go into the details, but anyhow, the only way I could get any money out of that was we sold it. And I got, I think, $20,000. It was worth more than we sold it for.
Yeah.
And then my mother, she had some CDs, but it wasn't any huge amount, you know.
But it was stuff that gave you the chance to do something that you wouldn't do based on your own money savings.
And then I had my
It's a nice
profit
thing.
sharing, and I kept putting money into it. I was with the company, and I had that. So
Yeah.
that's where I started, you know, investing and saving. And but we did, Green and I did enjoy ourselves and doing all the things that we wanted to do.
So now, your current years, hobbies, interests, memories, currently.
Well, go back a little bit, you know, we had to move, when Greta started having these problems with dementia, she kept having small strokes, and she had this dementia. And of course we moved down to Texas here. And we wanted to be with one of the kids, and of course her daughter being down here, that's one of the reasons we moved down. So we went through that, you know, that was kind of a difficult thing to go through. But like dementia and Alzheimer's is a slow process, which is, I think, sometimes harder on the caregiver than it is on the person. And she passed away in 2006.
Was that when it was?
2006, March 15th of 2006.
So you moved down here and you picked Texas because Greta being close to her daughter and the situation like it is, that worked for it. It had nothing to do with the fact that you had a good-looking son-in-law, did it?
No. We like Steve. We love Steve. Then of course, like when I moved down here, why I really took up golf.
And we got you singing.
Yeah, I sang. I enjoy doing that.
Singing in public, in talent shows.
Yeah.
That was fun.
I'll probably be remembered for that.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure.
And I can't think of anything else. I've had a good life. I have no regrets.
And you're 93, so Pop, what advice would you give all family members as to why you're still so sharp, you're still a delight to be around. You still have things you look forward to doing, where most people your age are already under the grass, and if they're around, they just don't have any. I don't know what it is. What I love about you the most is the fact that you're living every day the way you do it. So tell us, what's your secret for longevity, and what advice you have for us kids and all the grandkids?
I don't think there's really any secret to longevity, but I think there's certain things that you can do that will help you. I think you should read. You should have an interest in something. My interest, of course, is in history. And I think you should exercise, have some kind of an exercise program you go through. And of course, try to eat right and don't drink too much. And I don't think there's any. I just guess it's probably, I don't know, when you have the right aches and pains, go to the doctors. Don't lie about it, or don't try to live with it. Get it taken care of, because that helps you both mentally and physically. I mean, if you have something wrong with you and not tell anybody about it sometime is hard on you.
Mm-hmm. I know your exercise, proper eating. I've never seen a person like you, especially at your age, that knows plus or minus within tenths of weight of how much you weigh, and if you're going a little bit over that amount, your target weight, or even by a fraction of a pound, that you know that how much fractions you're off. And I think that's a good thing. You keep control of yourself.
Well, you know, I was getting up to 159 and 60, and it was all in my gut, and still probably in my gut, but I'm down now to around 146. Sometimes 145, but I've still got to work on this stomach.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not healthy to have a stomach. They say it's not good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I don't have no special formula. Just taking care of yourself. Exercising your mind, exercising your body. That keeps you active longer. Now, you can live to be pretty old, but it depends on, there's a lot of people in nursing homes live to be pretty old, but their quality of life
Mm-hmm.
is not good.
You know, the other thing I've noticed about you that, again, I think is a real asset to your longevity and how you're living is you love to laugh.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I always have been that way. I've never, I don't know. I do love to laugh.
You do.
I find a lot of things funny.
You really do. Yeah.
I find a lot of things funny. Sometimes
I think that's where Ronnie gets his chuckles.
Sometimes I shouldn't laugh when I do, but yeah. When I was a kid, the big entertainment was to find a kid getting these roller skates for the first time.
Yeah.
When I grew up, we had these roller skates, skate on the sidewalk. You get some big long-legged awkward kid on roller skates, and that was fun watching him. But I've never let things really. If you're being a salesman, you better you better get. It's hard. I mean, you get your feelings hurt as a salesman,
Oh, I bet.
But that never worried me too much. I was always more of a challenge when I wasn't doing well with a person, but I usually break them down.
So, what was your favorite song that you enjoyed singing? Which one?
Oh, well, my favorite. I like all of Frank Sinatra, and I like Dean Martin. Of course, this has to do with my age. Songs right now, they're popular, but they disappear. But I like back in that area, the Tommy Darcy's and the Benny Goodman's, and of course that's ancient. But for me now, I still like to listen to that.
Yeah. Well, I thinking this, maybe we wrap this up pretty well. This has really been enjoyable for me, and before I ask you one more thing as something maybe you can do. Anything else you want to tell us about?
No?
Well, since you like singing, and since you we're about ready to sign off, could you maybe sing us a little line? I think that'd be a great way to sign off.
It had to be you. It had to be you. I've wandered around and finally found somebody new. That's all I'm gonna go.
Oh, that's
I'm going
beautiful.
further.
Hey, Pop, we all love you.
Okay.